I'm finally at the next stage in my rock crawler build. And what that's going to be is putting this new Atlas transfer case into this rock crawler chassis so I can continue moving forward with like the drive lines and the exhaust and the seats and different things like that I've been waiting on till I get this. These are hard to come by right now. I had a 6-month wait to get one of these. I ordered it back before Thanksgiving and it just showed up, and here it is mid-April. So Advanced Adapters makes these Atlas transfer cases, and these things are great. They're super strong, reliable. These are pretty important to have because you will get a lot of strain kind of through the transfer case. I broke stock transfer cases before, and I didn't really start breaking them until I went to sticky tires. Then I started breaking them pretty consistently. And that's why the Atlas is so important. Now guys running portal axles get away with something more like this Dana 300 over here. This is a Dana 300 transfer case, and basically the Atlas is kind of based off that Dana 300 transfer case, but it's got a beefier case to it, but it's still got the similar design on the inside. And the reason they can do that is because their gearing's on the outside of their axles, and so it's not as much torque kind of running through the transfer case. But with my build, I'm using the Atlas transfer case because I'm just using regular straight axles and not portal axles. But I wanted to use portal axles, just at the time I couldn't get a hold of any. I was calling around, couldn't get a hold of anybody that was selling any, so I moved forward with this and then kind of turned this project into more of a budget buggy rather than more of like a portal build. But either way, it'll be fun regardless. So what I'm doing, another thing I'm doing to kind of save money, I've got my gears for both the front and rear axle right here ready to go. This is for the front Dana 60, and then I've got my gears for my 14-bolt axle. Another way that I'm kind of saving money is I'm doing my gearing mostly in this transfer case. So by using the combination of a 4L60 transmission, an Atlas 4.3:1, and 410 gears, I'm actually getting a deeper crawl ratio than my other rock crawler, which uses a turbo 400 transmission, 3.8:1 transfer case, Atlas transfer case, and 538 gear. So I'll show an example here on screen on how I come up with that calculation. So here's an example of my new rock crawler ratio. So what we've got is we've got the transmission ratio of the 4L60, the Atlas ratio, and then the axle gear ratio that comes up with the 53.94:1 final crawl ratio. So what does that mean? That means with 42-inch tires at 1500 RPM, 50:1, it would be 3.9 miles per hour. And with an automatic, that's always worked pretty well for me. If I was using a manual, I'd probably want a deeper range than that. So here's my current rock crawler. Transmission ratio with the turbo 400 is 2.48. My transfer case is a 3.8, and my axle gear ratio is a 5.38. That gives me a 50.7:1 final crawl ratio. So with my current setup, using 410 gears, I'm actually getting a deeper crawl ratio than what my current rock crawler is. So once again, I go to Crawlpedia's website. I've used them in the past and talked about them in the past. They're a free website that you can just get basically a ratio calculator, a final crawl ratio calculator. And so what I did, I put in what your first gear is in your transmission that you're using, and then put that into the calculator, the same with the transfer case that you're using, and the same with the gears that you're using in the axle. It comes up with the final crawl ratio. So what I'm doing here is I'm saving money by not having to re-gear these axles, and I'm getting stronger ring gears because a 410 ratio is stronger than a 538. There's more material. So basically, that's one thing that I'm doing to kind of save money. If I'm going to order a transfer case, I might as well order this with a little bit deeper gearing and just leave the axles alone. What that'll do though is in 4 high, when I'm cruising down the trail, it might be geared just a little high. But the only time I really am going to use 4 high is just running down to a trailhead. So in 4 low, it should be right where I like it. and it's pretty similar to my other rock crawler, and that's how I know with the final crawl ratio with 42-inch tires that I'll be happy with that. So that's another way that I'm kind of saving money on the diffs, and just kind of spent the money more on the transfer case. I might have been able to get away with this Dana 300 transfer case if I would have put some more money into that and kind of beefed it up a little bit. But by the time that's said and done, I would have been halfway into an Atlas where you can just order it and get it shipped there all ready to go. So one thing that people always forget is how much all these adapters and stuff to mate different things together start to add up. They do start to get pretty expensive before you know it, and they also add length to it as well. So it's just was easier to order this with all the adapters ready to go. And the good thing about this is when I put the first adapter on, the nice thing is I was able to get this to clock perfectly flat. My last rock crawler is not like that. Even with the adapters, it's kind of like this, so it hangs a little bit lower. The nice thing with this adapter is it looks like it's gonna mount perfectly flat on my skid plate. That means I can get the drivetrain down even lower. I'm also this is ending up shorter than what I anticipated because I'm removing a piece that's on the back of that 4L60 transmission. I'm removing that and then adding this, which is shorter. So in the end, this is going to be shorter than what I even anticipated. Because I took the measurements off my other Atlas transfer case and then kind of used those to gauge how much room I would need here. But with the adapters they sent me, I'm happy that it's going to clock flat and that it's going to be shorter than I even anticipated. So a couple kind of bonuses there. So what I was going to do is kind of rough this thing in place and then stick it in there and kind of see where I'm at. So here is the mount for the transfer case. I'm going to use this mount, but I'm not going to use these rubber bushings. I like to hard mount everything. So I will, instead of rubber bushings, I will just weld in some plates and put those there instead. So basically here's how the mounts work. That's not fully welded in yet. It's more just kind of tacked there until I kind of take everything back out. But this is how it's going to mount to the cross member right there, and then I've got bolts on each side to take it out and be able to take that mount off. So I have motor mounts on the front, and then I have these between the transmission and transfer case, and that's how my other one is. So I picked up a muffler. It's big, but I like my rock crawlers quiet. I want to be able to hear everything. It's only 6 inches in diameter, but it looks big compared to everything else. But it's going to sit down in there like that, and I've got plenty of room for that. Got my transfer case there, and I am now working on the seat bars. I will do another video on this, but basically that's how they're going to go. They're going to be removable. They have a bolt on each end so that can come up out of there, and if I ever need to work on this, the transmission can come out, the transfer case can come out, and I don't need to pull the motor. If I welded bars in across here and welded that all in, then I would have to pull the motor and pull everything out to get the transmission out. So that's kind of how I'm going about this. As far as the dash, tubes will kind of come down like this and then over, but there will be enough room to pull the transmission out. And an aluminum panel will pull out right there, so I have full access to the transmission. I never want to box myself in so I can't get anything out of there. I'm also working on the linkages and kind of how I'm going to do this. I've got some ideas, but that will be a future video as well. This is what it's going to look like with the seat end. So I've got my transfer case permanently bolted in. I've got a couple tubes here approximately with the height that I want to put this seat. I have enough room for my head. This is one of those kind of debates that's really kind of interesting to read people's comments on like internet forums or even like Facebook now. And people debate, how much room should I have between my head and the roof? And kind of a general rule of thumb for these smaller buggies is at least a fist. And it looks like that's going to be just fine. I like to keep my straps real tight, so if you do roll over, that the slack and the straps, you don't end up hitting your head on the roof. I will wear a helmet in this one because it's a little tighter, a little smaller than my other one. And whenever I roll, I always try to kind of duck my head like that. But I have enough room, plenty of room in here. I don't think I could make it any smaller. This seat is sitting on the transfer case. It's literally that tight. There's no extra room. So right here, it's going to be tight with my feet, but there's room. I had to kind of clearance off this header a little bit, kind of chop a few things off and weld some plate to it, but it's going to be just fine. Now I'm going to start kind of working on the dash and kind of figuring out how I'm going to do this. That's going to be kind of interesting. I was looking at how am I going to do that, but I've got some ideas. I've got some ideas what I'm going to do to make this work and have enough room for my legs. So that's the next thing that I'm working on. I'm going to get these seats permanently mounted and then kind of start working on this dash area and leave enough room so that I can pull the transmission out so the dash can't be narrower than the transmission is, because then I wouldn't be able to get the transmission out. So that's another thing that I'm taking into consideration. So these are my next steps. I started working on the dash. I started working on the radiator and getting the radiator fluid tubes run through the chassis. I'll update that in a future video. Just a whole bunch of these little side projects, trying to get everything kind of to start coming together. But another thing that I forgot to mention about why these Atlases are important, or a Dana 300 type transfer case, is having a transfer case where you can separately disengage the front axle or the rear axle. Being able to do a front dig and being able to spin in a tighter area. Another thing that being able to do a rear dig kind of helps with when you're bound up somewhere where you're kind of bound up, and if you stay in four-wheel drive, it just makes it worse. Sometimes you can kind of pull one or the other out and then work your hydraulic ram with just being in like a rear dig to kind of push you out away from an undercut. So that's just another advantage of having a transfer case like this, is to be able to do those sorts of things. It really makes a big difference in tight situations. So I'm happy that I finally got it. Took a while, but this will be easier to move forward. Also, these seats. I got these seats. I got a great deal on Craigslist. I always watch Craigslist for these kind of deals, like seats and winches and stuff like that. And I got these seats on Facebook Marketplace. I got a great deal on them. I saw them pop up for their Corbeau seats. They popped up for like $200 and I ran and picked them up. So that saved me like another $1,000, because I was ready to spend about $1,200 with seats and harnesses for a set of PRPs, which I used in my other buggy. But these Corbeau seats are just fine. So that's another way I kind of save money, is trying to find good deals on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. So just gonna keep chipping away. This thing's kind of starting to come together. Maddie, you ready to drive this thing? Yeah. Yeah? You gonna have fun? Yeah. We got a little bit more work to do, huh? Yeah. Yeah, I know. We got a lot more to do, but we're getting there, and it fits you pretty good, huh? Mm-hmm. You got tons of room to go crawling in those rocks.